Hello, Marlene. Leaving? A few of my last cigarettes as I don't want to die young, so I'm gonna go back to vaping, sucking that dick of my robot overlords. But I'm filming this as I just wanted to make an update as to where I've been, what I've been doing, and I'm currently on break during my fourth psychology class now, and I gotta say I've had some real ambivalence about it. As I feel like for one, I'm the only person who actually contributes anything to the discussion. I'm basically orating along with the professor as I go, in a way that is, obviously, consensual and not just me kind of barking out of turn. But, upon, doing exactly what, someone like me does, which is to try and interact with other people and to find out their motivations for why they're here in the first place. It seems like no one's here because they actually want to do psychology. They want an elective, so that would lead them to something else. And there's also, a great deal of foreign students, and so there's not much interaction. I try to go out of my way to talk to people as much as I possibly can. But otherwise, I feel like it's nice to be active, and it's, I'm also, because this is an introductory class, really familiar with the material inside and out. Because when I was finishing high school, I only had a couple electives, so I opted to spend some of my time at school doing Psychology 12, which is essentially the first year of psychology in university. So the material just kind of it comes to me naturally, and my quiz marks have shown that, as well as my ability to regularly engage with the lectures as they're happening. Again, not rudely speaking out of turn, putting up my hand, making sure I'm not interjecting when I'm not supposed to. But it's weird. It's I've tried to buddy up with people and to become chummy with them, but I don't know. It's just people these days, they just aren't very, or at least people my age just aren't very receptive to wanting to talk about stuff. And perhaps that onus is on me because like with my YouTube channel, I am a very overt person, so I like to share anecdotal experiences that are relevant in my life. And perhaps the unfettered nature of talking about such sensitive issues, like being essentially treated like a guinea pig because of major depressive disorder, central nervous system sensitivity, chronic nerve pain, general pain, ADD, anxiety, and all that. Perhaps makes some people uncomfortable, but otherwise, one thing that I've been struggling with is having toxoplasmosis from cat litter, because I was essentially house sitting for the last month, and my parents had the brilliant idea of leaving the cat litter inside, so when I scooped it up, it would create this plume of dust that would end up sort of in my nostrils and in my respiratory system, and it created this really, really awful virus that I am now on the tail end of. Fuck for that. For those of you who have seen Trainspotting, that's what kills Tommy in it, because he has, AIDS as a result of, which is essentially HIV that's transmuted into an immune disorder. And because of his crippled immune system, he is unable to fight off the virus from, this kitten he bought that's shitting everywhere, and it kills him. Because, there are rare cases where toxoplasmosis actually manages to make its way up into the retina and can affect people's vision, and then into the brain, where the parasite becomes extremely dangerous. Now, I am immunocompromised myself, but my doctors, they, essentially said, it's better if you fight this off yourself. And upon doing some Google research myself, I found that very much is the case, as to essentially fight it off yourself versus taking an antibiotic. And as many of you know, taking antibiotics more and more makes you more resistant to their effects. It takes about the same amount of time, so they only issue antibiotics to people with toxoplasmosis who, like Tommy in Trainspotting, have highly compromised immune systems, who have AIDS for one reason or another, because AIDS is not something that occurs explicitly as a result of HIV. It can be for a number of reasons where the immune system becomes extremely compromised. This is a distinction not a lot of many people make. I think I already touched on that point. But also, the muggy, hot weather that we've been having. We've had this, Indian summer here. And I've always said to people, in my city, if you don't believe in global warming, then live here for 4 months, and, you might just change your mind. And that's proven true in just about every case I can think of. So that's led to there being a lot of heat, a lot of humid mugginess, and stuff like fibromyalgia, which I experience, nerve pain, stuff like that. It tends, for me, anyways, I can't speak for everyone else, because with fibromyalgia, I always say it's the doctor's way of saying we have no fucking clue what's happening. It's for me, personally speaking, a result of drastic shifts in weather that causes a great deal of pain. Now, another thing that I'm hesitant, but in the interest of transparency and also wanting to cause harm reduction, I became working dependent on benzodiazepines as like alprazolam, and even look on PubMed, actually does have an analgesic effect on people who experience chronic pain. And so that, along with massive amounts of ketamine, was stuff that I've been abusing for quite a while to fight off the simultaneous respiratory illness, as well as the withdrawal symptoms caused by this benzodiazepine taper that I'm on. As far as ketamine goes, I got really, really into using it, and so because of that, I want to issue a caveat. Ketamine, I do think, is one of the best analgesics. I think it is even more effective than stuff like CBD, THC. This, of course, depends on the individual, but for me, I find it personally more helpful as, say, if I was to take a high-dose edible, like 100 milligram THC edible, or Phoenix Tears, or whatever, like Simpson oil, which is essentially a high amount of THC with a little bit of CBD. It'll numb everything out except for my prostate pain, and because of that numbing effect on everything else, it amplifies the prostate pain and it makes it unbearable for me. Whereas with ketamine, because of its anesthetic effect, it tends to reduce my anxiety towards the effects, and it tends to numb me out entirely. But I was going from having one intramuscular injection pretty much every hour on the hour, and I was marking up my body, doing disgusting things to it. My tolerance got so high that I was doing over 100 milligrams in an intramuscular shot at a time of very strong RNS ketamine, which would ordinarily be enough to anesthetize myself, whereas now, because of that tolerance, it doesn't. But I still find, now that I've dialed it back substantially, I still continue to use my nasal spray. I even use my ketamine nasal spray in class, and Oh yeah, on that note, I wanted to say that in my ketamine nasal spray video, I wanted to add that the water I was using, it turned out, wasn't saline solution. It was just sterile water. So the answer to correcting that, so you have a sterile solution that isn't prone to evaporating, is to essentially just put a pinch of salt in it. You can find recipes online for making saline solution, or you could just buy saline mist, and you could mix, a gram of ketamine with, essentially 10 mils of saline solution. So I just wanted to give you that update because I do find that's very important. Now, on the note of ketamine, I'm trying to get back into having it prescribed, but on the basis of a PRN, because I went through our government, and another tragic failing of our government, from what I found, is someone who deals with chronic pain and this extremely debilitating mental illness called treatment-resistant major depressive disorder, is that once I got to the point where I did infusions, where they essentially inject you with ketamine in a clinical setting, like so main vein, which something I would not advise anyone to do on their own, because it hits you so fast that there are reports of people who are unable to get the needle out in time. They pass out with a needle in their arm. So that's something that I should really stress should only be done under clinical supervision. But at the same time, a lot of clinics use highway robbery tactics where they are essentially preying on desperate people, kind of like televangelists, at like the clinic I was going to, for example, which was a great clinic and all, but it was charging people $2,500 per infusion. So I did very few infusions. And by the time I got to the pain specialists in my government at a local hospital, they said, well, your pain seems to come back after a couple of days. To be viable for an infusion, you need to have at least 3 weeks of relief. And that just wasn't happening. So they immediately, after months of waiting, scratched my name off the list, which I found was, very reckless. And then they also forced SSRIs upon me, which led to me getting this prognosis of Huntington's because of the seizures I was having as a result of not having the neurochemical imbalance, I guess, that required them. I mean, I still have very low amounts of dopamine, but have been able to stimulate my hippocampus and a more regular serotonin dopamine flow by the use of psychedelics. And my use of psychedelics is ketamine aside, I don't consider ketamine a psychedelic. I consider it as a dissociative, as something in its own right. It can intensify psychedelics. I do very much enjoy the combination of the two. It is not in itself a psychedelic, but for me, where it works is as a PRN, so essentially as needed. So when the pain flares, I take a little bit of the nasal spray, and it seems to help. But in any case, that's what's been going on with me lately, and then hence the infrequency in my uploads, and also for those watching who are friends of mine who I haven't reached out to, these are essentially reasons why I have to spend most of the day in my room lying with multiple fans on me to make sure that my body temperature is at a median, so the irregularities do not lead to something like my neuralgic pain creating more perceived pain throughout my body. And it's been specifically rough on my sleep, which has never been great to begin with. I've always had insomnia, to the point where I've gone to like the most prestigious university in my city multiple times, where they have a sleep disorder clinic, and they put an EEG reader on my head, and they get me to sleep through the night there. And because it's a different bed and sleep hygiene is something that's very important for me, I typically wasn't able to get very good results from it. And over the years, I've been prescribed a lot of different drugs for treating sleep. Ambien being one of them. And the thing is, Ambien itself, the brand name drug Ambien, the oral 10 milligram tablet, is not something that's prescribed in my country. It's we get something that is similar, but it's a sublingual tablet of 5 milligrams. And I was prescribed it for many years, and being young and just going headlong into drug addiction at the time, I was trying to abuse it to get these effects, of the Ambien walrus that people were talking about, but I never really got anything other than a distortion of my open eye visuals, and then some strange sort of closed eye visuals, like kind of barbed wire wrapping together. And I was also, when I was institutionalized as a teenager, forcibly prescribed Zopiclone without my consent, and also other stuff like trazodone, which is a very commonly prescribed antidepressant. It's used off-label, like in the same vein as Seroquel, which was also, Seroquel was prescribed to me as well multiple times for sleep, and it always had an adverse effect on me because I didn't have that irregularity in my my neurology that created stuff like schizophrenia, where Seroquel was created initially to treat. And because of these effects, I actually experienced extreme hppd as a result of being on it. And I remember once I was prescribed 75 milligrams of Seroquel, and it was like I was on like 20 hits of acid. I remember, just being at this kaleidoscopic pool party where this orgy of human limbs were moving together and changing, and it was one of the freakiest things to experience, because I hadn't ingested LSD for years at that point, because at that point I was terrified of psychedelics, thinking that they had created these visual anomalies that I was experiencing, whereas the reality was that was an early manifestation of my chronic pain, my chronic nerve disorder. And it's changed since then. I still do have hppd to a degree. I still see tracers, colors, patterns, stuff like that. But I've had that since childhood, so I think that for me is kind of an anomaly in my brain, as well as something that was exacerbated by giving or by ingesting medication that was forced upon me as a teenager when I was institutionalized. And also, malformations in the brain, such as being on methadone, and my brain not being able to properly self-regulate, because essentially my brain was, not a lot of people know this, but the opioid receptors, they have this very, very crucial membrane on them, which is imperative in the transmission of neurons through various synapses to the rest of the brain. And so I think as a result of having that completely walled off since a young age, and being a late bloomer as far as puberty goes, if my facial hair doesn't give that away. I'm 27, I have the same facial hair as I did when I was 15. I credit a lot of that with exacerbating these issues, but at the same time I also don't want to throw my own accountability to the wind, because I did also self-medicate quite a bit, but what's now known as concurrent disorder, which is essentially this disorder where addicts are using what they know will mitigate the effects that they deal with and that debilitate them with street drugs, because they're not receiving proper treatment. That's essentially the phenomenon. That's what I was doing. But I do believe that I did some damage to my own brain because of that, and I believe that psychedelics are, causing neuroregenesis and repairing some of those damaged synapses, and also helping neurons to be transmitted more because of heightened activity in my hippocampus. But because I've been sick with this respiratory illness, this toxoplasmosis, I've been very cautious about using heavy hallucinogens like DMT. I haven't messed with that. Ketamine doesn't seem to really be affected by a lowering in my CNS or my immune system, both of which are, they play off one another. So I think that I did some damage to myself because of that, but nothing in contrast to what damage was inflicted by the stuff I was prescribed. Now, despite all of this, I have been, really into Genji lately, who many of you may know is a fantastic manga artist, and he does body horror in a very unique way that can only be rivaled by people like David Cronenberg, Guillermo del Toro, games like Silent Hill and so on, and that oddly enough, not oddly enough, but coincidentally enough, Guillermo del Toro, Junji Ito, and then Hideo Kojima worked on Silent Hills, and their brilliance and the synergy of their skills really shows. And because of that and my fascination with people like Robert Anton Wilson and David Foster Wallace, I have been writing quite a bit of stories that are similar in nature to Ito's and the other aforementioned authors and directors, and just artists in general. Anyways, that should conclude my update. I've got to get back to class now. Do wish me luck, and please do subscribe, and please do continue to watch, as my views have dropped quite a bit. Same with my subscriber rate. I can probably attribute that to there being a lack of uploads on my part. But the thing is, I do have 130 something videos on my channel. So please, if you want to continue to assist me in helping to reach a state of just natural neurochemical flows like serotonin, dopamine, which I do by myself by doing quite a bit of exercise on a daily basis. I do about 2 hours of exercise a day, making sure to give myself a rest break every day, to make sure that those fissures in my muscle can heal. And for those of you who lift, know that that's how you build muscle as a result. But because of my high metabolism, I don't really build muscle. I essentially just tone what's already there. But I've been doing that, and I also found a great relief from my channel. So hopefully you guys can continue to contribute by subscribing, commenting, liking, doing all these things that can get my channel into the algorithm. It's also been financially very difficult for me, having been out of a job because of the VPD's attempt to street sweep, which call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think a lot of this is imputed to China, and how the West is so immensely indebted to China. And this isn't racist. I'm talking about the Chinese government here. The Chinese government, they absolutely love, the Chinese populace absolutely loves places like my city and other places in Canada as a vacation spot. And so while I don't discourage people who are homeless and drug addicts from setting up tents and living wherever they can, the police have allowed that to go on unfettered, allowed fentanyl dealers to continue dealing, benzo down, which is fentanyl, and tisalam or fentanyl and a tranquilizer, or methamphetamine, jib, and to use it in plain view. But for some reason, they go after the potheads, and I think that's probably because in China there is just as like Japan, there is a very zero tolerance type policy against drugs in general, especially drugs that have been proven to, if anything, have medicinal value, such as cannabis. So I've essentially had to be collecting bottles and cans and stuff like this to pay for what I perceive as medicaments, which are ketamine, cannabis, tobacco, and so forth. But as I said, with my ketamine, I'm trying to aside from the nasal spray, just take a tolerance break and not administer these massive intramuscular injections. But on that note, I want to wish you all well and happy trails. I had a really lovely shroom trip. It was quite mild. It was just 1.5 grams in chocolate yesterday, and it was exactly what I needed. Well, my nasal spray is giving me a little bit of a Kalo. That's one thing you gotta look out for when you're doing K, is it likes to congeal and leave traces around your nostrils. But otherwise, that's about it. So I'm gonna wrap it up here and bid you adieu. Stay sexy, beast.